Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Thank you all so much for joining us on this very busy day in our nation's capital and online. This is quite a start to December, and we are ready to build back better. My name is Tiernan Sittenfeld. I'm the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs at the League of Conservation Voters. I'm so happy to be here today with a great group of senators. We have two of them with us already. Chair Debbie Stabenow from the great state of Michigan, who is such a climate champion and the chair of the Agriculture Committee, and Congresswoman Catherine Cortez Masto from the beautiful, amazing state of Nevada, who works so hard for clean energy jobs and conservation and so much more. So I am happy to be here today on behalf of LCV, Climate Power, the Climate Action Campaign, and people in every state across this country who are calling on Congress to make once in a generation transformational progress on climate action, on environmental justice, on good paying union jobs, and so much more. From this summer's catastrophic heat and wildfires out west, to the absolutely deadly and devastating floods and storms across the Midwest and up and down the East Coast, it is clear that the costs of inaction on climate are absolutely staggering. It has never been more important or more urgent for Congress to act on the code red for humanity that is the climate crisis. We are absolutely thrilled that the House recently passed Build Back Better to do just that, to meet the moment on climate, jobs, and justice. And now we are so pleased to be over here on the Senate side with a great group of senators who are all in, working tirelessly to ensure that the Senate quickly passes Build Back Better. We, of course, applaud the Biden-Harris administration and Congress for recently enacting the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law. This is real progress. It will result in meaningful and badly needed investments in electric vehicle charging stations, in electric school buses, in modernizing the grid, and replacing harmful lead service lines, and so much more. But to fully realize the climate benefits of the infrastructure bill, the Senate must move forward, must quickly pass Build Back Better and get it to President Biden's desk. The Senate can and must pass Build Back Better to meet the moment on climate, to pass the climate test, to put our nation squarely on track to cut climate pollution in half by 2030, the goal set by President Biden that science and environmental and racial justice require. This is also vitally important to saving people money on their energy bills and on other monthly expenses, to investing in the frontline communities and the communities of color that have suffered the most from toxic pollution, and in creating and sustaining millions of good-paying union jobs. So all of this is going to make such a huge difference in people's everyday lives. That's why it's so popular, so necessary, and so urgent. So we are so grateful to be with this incredible group of senators, which is going to grow. I already mentioned who I'm going to kick it to next, the chair of the Agriculture Committee, Debbie Stabenow from the great state of Michigan, who leads on agriculture, on nature-based solutions to the climate crisis, on electric vehicles, and so much more. Then we will hear from Senator Cortez Masto, again, such a climate champion, and then another climate champion, Senator Michael Bennet from the great state of Colorado. I'll introduce the other speakers as they arrive. Thank you so much for your incredible leadership, Chair Stabenow.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Tiernan. Good afternoon. It's a beautiful day, and we have so much to get done. Thank you to the League of Conservation Voters and Climate Power and everybody here. Climate action now, right? Yes, that's what this is about, is taking climate action now. We don't have a minute to waste. We know that this is something that, frankly, there should have been action on before. But the sense of urgency gets greater every single day, frankly, every single minute. In the last 5 years, we have spent $126 billion a year in taxpayer money just picking up the pieces. That doesn't count what homeowners and businesses have had to do, what farmers have had to do. It doesn't count the loss of life. And those numbers are going up and up and up every single year. In fact, it will be surpassed this year. So this is the moment. And it's exciting to see that we are in a spot to do something extremely significant. Now, I have a lot of different hats. You know, we make things and grow things in Michigan. That's what we do, and I don't think you have an economy unless you do that. And one of the things that we are making is great new electric vehicles, cars and trucks, and we know there's school buses and vans and all of the other things that need to happen to electrify our transportation system. We have made a start in the infrastructure bill with charging infrastructure and need to make sure that is moved forward quickly. But there is so much more that needs to happen. We've got to make sure that we are encouraging people through consumer incentives where they can deduct right there when they're buying the vehicle. We want them to be able to deduct a consumer credit to lower the price of this great vehicle, to be able to get into it and incentivize people, not only for cars, but trucks as well. And we also, in our consumer bonus that the House passed, that I have led in the Senate, we want to make sure that we are incentivizing good paying jobs for workers and the opportunity to collectively bargain and organize in a union, and that we are encouraging people to purchase vehicles made in the United States by our great workers. This is incredibly important. So we have several pieces. We have the consumer credit, we have charging stations, and then we want to make sure that we are making the component parts in the United States. We've seen what happened when we have a global supply chain breakdown, and if we aren't making the batteries here, if we aren't doing the semiconducting parts here, if we aren't doing the rest of it here, we don't have the good paying jobs, and frankly, we can't make the vehicles here. So the clean energy manufacturing efforts in Build Back Better are also incredibly important, not just for electric vehicles, for wind, for solar, for other important clean energy provisions. This is a very important part. And I will finally say this, that from the Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee, we are very excited about the role that nature-based solutions can play. When I was in Glasgow speaking and making presentations on this, there was a lot of excitement around the world about what needs and what can happen in a cost-effective way, both for climate-smart agriculture, where we're keeping carbon in the ground with a whole range of strategies that farmers do now, but they want to do more, and we need to fund and help make sure that's happening. So a whole range of strategies that need to happen, and how we, in fact, support sustainable forestry. And now, you know, we hear a lot, I see all these programs, all these big machines that will cost billions of dollars to take carbon out of the atmosphere. Well, I got another way to do it. Plant a tree. Plant 100 trees. Plant 1,000 trees. In our infrastructure bill, a bipartisan bill that I have with Rob Portman passed to do 1.2 billion trees that we're going to now fund planting on public lands. There's more that we can do around the world to stop deforestation, to plant, because we know it's not enough to just stop pollution. If we are not taking pollution out of the atmosphere that's already there, we're not going to be able to do what needs to be done. So let's get all of it done. Let's use every tool that we have. And we, as Democrats, are committed to doing that with our great president, Joe Biden. I'm going to turn it now to somebody who knows firsthand about what needs to be done on our farm land and who's always been leading the way, Senator Jon Tester.
All right, Jon Tester.
Hey.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thanks, Debbie. Look, it's already been announced, I'm a senior senator from Montana, but I also have a real job. Not that this isn't a real job, it's a very important job, but it's a farmer. And I know I don't look like it, but this year was our 44th harvest for my wife and I. We've been on the land since 1978 was our first harvest. You guys do the math. And I can tell you unequivocally, and not just by a little bit, by a lot, this was the worst harvest we've ever had. And by the way, it wasn't just on my farm, it was everybody west of Mississippi. We're infected by a drought this year that was catastrophic. That cost the taxpayers billions and billions of dollars in catastrophic assistance. Okay? So here's the deal, guys. I raise food. My neighbors raise food. If we don't get rain and we have temperatures in the hundreds in early June in north central Montana, we don't raise much food. And that puts some real problems out there for us. So this climate change thing that we're talking about is something that we got to have common sense solutions to get fixed. Okay? I also run equipment to harvest that land and to till that land. And I'm going to tell you, I put a lot of diesel fuel in that equipment every morning before I go out and work, which contributes to climate change. I long for the day when I can have a tractor that's run off a battery, that's powered by wind or powered by renewable energy. That's right. And that's where Build Back Better comes in. We've got to have more research into affordable batteries that are durable. We've got the electric motors already. This all can be done. So we need to get this done. And I'll tell you why. Because if we don't, and this is not something to scare you, this is just a fact. If we don't do something about climate change and start today with real solutions, there's going to be a lot of hungry people in this world. A lot of hungry people. So it's on us, for our kids and for our grandkids, to make this happen. I don't know who's up to bat next. Oh, now then I've got to give a glowing introduction to the marvelous, wonderful Senator from Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masco, AKA CCM.
Thank you, John. First of all, it is my pleasure to be out here with my colleagues, but with LCV and Climate Power and everyone standing here. We all know and we all have been working to address what we see when you walk out your door every day, that I see when I walk out my door and I'm home, that climate change is an existential threat. And I don't have to tell you, from Nevada, literally, you see the wildfires happening, you go out and breathe the wildfires, longer seasons, hotter seasons when it comes to wildfires, and drought. Bathtub ring around Lake Mead. The fact that now we have a declared drought, that we have to actually stop taking as much water as we normally would off the Colorado River, it's real. This is all as a result of climate change. And that's why the legislation that the Democrats in this administration that we have worked on and we have passed address the climate crisis. It really is important that we come together to figure out how we augment water along the Colorado River. We were able to put money in to support large-scale water recycling projects to help augment the water in Colorado. That's in the bipartisan infrastructure package. How do we address the drought? That's one of the reasons we look to figure out the funding that is going to be so important for all of our communities in the West. The other thing are wildfires. Longer, harder. I can't tell you all of the men and women that I have talked to that fight these fires. And they're, not only are they tired, they're overwhelmed, and we've got to do more to support them. That's why not only do we have to put more funding into wildfire suppression, but we need to put it in the restoration after the wildfire and the preparation before the wildfire, and take advantage of all this great new technology that's going to help us fight these fires. That money to support those areas is in the bipartisan infrastructure package that the Democrats passed, that is supported by the administration. And let me just tell you this, Nevada is primed to take advantage of the clean energy and the innovation economy that's coming in the 21st century. We have solar, wind, geothermal. We have battery storage. We have battery recycling. We have large-scale infrastructure, charging infrastructure stations throughout the state of Nevada. Now, most people don't even know where Lovelock, Nevada is, but if you're driving an electric vehicle and you need to charge it, there's a charging station in Lovelock, Nevada. So we are ready and we are primed. And why is this important? Because it creates jobs. It will grow our economy, and it will prepare us not only for the 21st century, but to compete in this country, and the jobs and bringing the supply chain here and creating these jobs in manufacturing. That is so important for the United States moving forward. So the bipartisan infrastructure package, the Build Back Better that we are working on right now with this administration, it is all going to lead us into these opportunities that are so good for our families. And it is important that we bring the workforce with us. The work that we are doing is retraining the workforce. It is bringing this, reskilling this workforce. It is making sure that every family, every individual has an opportunity to participate in the future that we are creating to grow jobs in this country. So I am so pleased to be here with all of you. Now I get the opportunity to introduce one of my colleagues who knows what it's like to address the drought along the Colorado River, and that is Senator Michael Bennet from Colorado. I'm always pleased to work with him on so many issues, including climate change.
Thank you so much. I heard that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Catherine, for that introduction. Thanks for being, and I don't really have much to say after Catherine talked about it. She knows what life on the Colorado River is like, and the Western Democrats this year that are supporting this bill understand how tough a summer this has been for people living in the West. In my state, we've had mudslides because last year we had the 3 worst fires in our state's history, and I-70 was closed for a long time, affecting our economy as a result of climate change. We spent a lot of this summer indoors in Colorado because there were so many health warnings because of the smoke that was coming from California. There were days, weeks really, that went by when people on the Front Range of Colorado could not see the Rocky Mountains from the Front Range. No one lives in Colorado not to see the mountains. No one lives in Colorado because they don't want to go outside during the summertime. And we cannot accept this as a permanent state of affairs in our state. Is next summer, is it going to be 100 days? Is it going to be 150 days when people have these health warnings, when they can't go outside? So what I want to say first is this is not some distant future issue that we're dealing with. This is something that we have to deal with today, and it's hurting our economy and hurting our health today, and that's why we have to act urgently. Chairwoman Stabenow has been a tremendous leader on the Agriculture Committee, on which I serve. I'm the chair of the subcommittee on forestry, climate, and conservation, and we have done a lot of work together to make sure that we are answering the call from farmers and ranchers all over the western United States, many of whom are Republicans, by the way, that we've got to address our national forests, that it is a disgrace that between climate change and the federal government's absolute negligence when it comes to our national forests, all of our watersheds in the West that start in those national forests are at risk. They're at risk because of climate change, they're at risk because of fires, and we are spending billions and billions and billions of dollars a year fighting fires at the cost of $50,000 an acre. This bill is going to give us the chance finally to spend billions of dollars at the cost of about $1,500 an acre to actually do the work that's required to protect these watersheds and do the fire mitigation that Catherine talked about. This is the biggest investment in our national forest ever. That's what climate change legislation looks like. And the investments that we're making in conservation that Chair Stabenow talked about earlier, that is the most significant investment that we have made since the Dust Bowl, which was a moment our state remembers very well and is not something that we want to repeat. Last point I'll make is this. I've got 3 daughters that are 22, 20, and 17. And I can tell you this, for the next generation of Americans, this has nothing to do with politics. This is an existential threat. They need us to act now, and they are watching whether we act now. Whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or Independents is completely irrelevant to them. They need us to act, and they know the United States has to lead, and that's why we have to step up in the coming couple of weeks to get this done. With that, I will turn it over to my pal, the great senator from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Tim Kaine.
Great. Thanks, Michael. You're good, man. Hey, good afternoon to everyone, and what a great group of friends. And it just strikes me as we're standing here together with LCV and Climate Power, we're each telling our own state's story, and each of our state's story is somewhat different, but there's a common problem and there is a common solution, and that's what the Build Back Better plan brings us in terms of climate action now. The Virginia story, I could tell you a lot, but I'll just tell you one thing: sea level rise. 1.7 million Virginians live in Hampton Roads. Hampton Roads is the second most vulnerable community to sea level rise other than New Orleans in the eastern half of the United States. And sea level rise isn't a tomorrow issue in Hampton Roads. There are neighborhoods in Hampton Roads that used to be the hottest residential real estate markets, beautiful historic homes in downtown Portsmouth. The market isn't hot anymore because normal tidal action floods the streets and basements of these homes so frequently that the real estate market has turned upside down. It's the center of naval power, not only for the United States but the world, but the main road into our principal Navy base in the United States is now flooded very commonly, with estimates that those days where it's underwater and inaccessible could get to 60, 70, 80 a year in the not too distant future. We have a beautiful community in the Chesapeake Bay, Tangier Island, oystermen who have been doing this work for generations. They speak with an Elizabethan English accent because this island, such a beautiful place, has been so isolated. It could easily be wiped out this century by erosion driven by sea level rise. Jamestown settlement, where the first English came in to the United States in 1607, that could be gone by the end of the century if we don't do something about sea level rise. So again, this is not a tomorrow issue, it's a today issue with impact on our quality of life and impact on our military readiness in the center of naval power. Virginia's also happy to be part of the solution. We're going to have one of the largest offshore wind developments in the U.S. off Virginia Beach that will power 670,000 homes. And I want to thank the Biden administration for prioritizing permitting for offshore wind installations near Virginia and elsewhere. This is a great new thing, but Congress now has to do our part. And our part is passing this far-reaching climate provisions of Build Back Better so we can accelerate this powerful economic engine, enable states like Virginia to rocket ahead in offshore wind and the other innovations that my colleague states are known for, and do it in a way that will both employ the next generations of Americans and have America play the leadership role we need to play in battling climate change. So excited to be with my colleagues. And now I want to introduce, I call him a neighbor even though we don't adjoin, but we do share the Delmarva Peninsula, my great friend from Delaware, Tom Carper.
Thank you, Tim. Please remain standing. I don't know if you guys have been to church lately, but our minister is fond of, he's really getting into his sermon. He'll turn around, the choir's always right behind him. He'll turn around and look at the choir and say, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but even choirs need to be preached to. And today I know I'm preaching to the choir, but even choirs need to be preached to. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for being the wind beneath our wings. I'm humbled to stand side by side with my colleagues, my friends, right here behind me in common cause. And when I think of climate change, the word that comes to mind for me is jobs. I mean, like, they go together. It's not a separate choice. They go together. Jobs. And that's exactly what, when we pass the Build Back Better bill, just like when we pass the infrastructure bill, we're going to create jobs. Climate-related jobs. Let me hear you say climate. Related. Jobs. Climate-related jobs. One more time. Climate-related jobs. All right. I think we got it. And a lot of them, not just a few, but millions of them. I want to say we live in Delaware. Martha and I live in Delaware. It's the lowest lying state in America. The seas around us are rising. Our state is sinking. So get there. If you want to go for a good vacation next summer, get there soon, because the developments are not especially encouraging on the beach front. But passing the Build Back Better Act can't come soon enough, because we know that the climate crisis, it's not just something that's off in the future. We don't need to worry about it. It's right here. It's right in our faces, and we need to do something about it now. And the great news is we can do something about that and create a ton of jobs at a time when we have millions of people who would like to have a great job. I like to quote Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein used to say two things that I know about. One, he used to say the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. He also said in adversity lies opportunity. And I think the latter applies here. A lot of adversity, climate change, pollution, people looking for work, but there's also great opportunity to address all that pollution, to address the threat to our planet, and help make sure that people who need jobs, want jobs, have the opportunity to get them. As we think about the opportunities that we face, I just want to mention a few of them. The opportunity to clean up the air that our children, our grandchildren breathe. The opportunity to cut back on the dangerous pollution caused by methane gas leaks. The opportunity to ensure that all Americans have access to clean, safe drinking water no matter what their zip code might be. And also the opportunity to right historic wrongs and deliver environmental justice to our neighbors, the underserved communities, whether they live on the other side of the street, the other side of town, or the other side of the world. And we have an opportunity to build back better. Nothing's going to stop us. Nothing is going to stop us. Let me hear you say nothing. Let me hear you say nothing. One more time like you really mean it. Nothing. Nothing is going to stop us in the pursuit of this vital opportunity. The time to act is now. Let me hear you say now. Right now. I mean right now. There you go. So that having been said, I want to turn. Has Chris Coons arrived? Is Chris? Senator Casey first. The states that actually presented us with the Constitution that gives us as a nation the opportunity to gather across this capital expanse. And regardless of what issue, what side of issues we're on, we have the opportunity to gather here, speak freely, and know that nobody's going to hold us to account for what we're saying. We can speak, and that's what we're doing here. There's a cacophony of noise here. I don't know if it strikes you as interesting, but it really truly is. It all started in Philadelphia, where the Constitution took form, and they sent it out to 13 colonies, including Delaware. The first state to ratify the Constitution was, guess what state? Delaware. That's why we're the first state. And we're glad the other 49 have come along and joined us. Senator Coons is there. Now I'm going to step on my lines. I was going to introduce Bob Casey, but I'm going to introduce Bob Casey. He is our friend. He is our neighbor. We love this guy and his family as well. Bob Casey, our buddy.
Thomas, thank you very much. Let's hear for Tom Carper again. Now, I'm not going to take you through any of those chants that Tom Carper did. You've already been trained to do that. But I do want to thank everyone for being here today. I also want to thank, of course, League of Conservation Voters. And Tiernan, where are you? Right here. Thank you for leading us in this effort. Look, you've heard a lot already. Just make maybe 3 points. Number one is it bears repeating over and over again that climate change is real, it's caused by human activity, it's a threat to human life, and the fourth point on that is we got to do something about it. And the do something about it part is why we're gathered here on this space to talk about the Build Back Better legislation. We're going to pass Build Back Better this month. And one of the urgencies, or one of the reasons for urgency with regard to Build Back Better is to finally at long last make the kind of investment in climate change, combating climate change that we've been talking about for so long. And so many advocates all across the country have been talking about for years. I know in my home state of Pennsylvania, yes, we're a big diverse state with big cities. We've got 67 counties, but 48 of those counties are rural counties. And all throughout those counties, you're seeing a coalition of people come together. People who have been active on environmental issues for years. People in faith communities of all different faiths coming together to work on these issues to preserve God's creation. That's one of the reasons it brings people to this issue. But along the way, they've said to us, what will the federal government do? Will the federal government invest in these strategies? So we're finally at the point where we can talk about that investment. Here's what we're talking about. $550 billion, 555, I left out 5 there, $555 billion for, and here's the list, expanded tax incentives, enhanced consumer rebates, bolstered conservation, a real tradition in our state. That's why I had one of the Civilian Conservation Corps pieces of legislation. Climate smart ag programs that Debbie Stabenow and so many others have talked about. And the establishment, as I mentioned, of a civilian climate conservation corps. So that's what we're talking about here, to finally make these investments. It is long overdue. We're going to get this done this month. We're going to pass Build Back Better and finally make the investment in climate change that we should have made years ago. Finally, we're at the point where we can say that we're acting to to preserve God's creation. Thanks very much, and now I'll introduce the other senator, the junior senator from the state of Delaware, that state that took 3 of our counties way back when. I'm still holding a grudge, but you know him as a great leader on a range of issues, including, of course, on the issue of climate change, and that is Senator Chris Coons.
Thank you, Senator Casey. Thank you, Chairman Carper, and thank you, Tiernan and Jean and the LCV and Climate Power. It is great to be with you. You've heard a range of senators speak today about the urgency of acting to address climate change. I led a delegation that recently was part of the COP26 conversations in Glasgow. And one of the most important things we heard from around the world is that the United States needs to show commitment, capacity, engagement in our work to combat climate. And one of the most important things we can do in the coming days is to pass the Build Back Better legislation. It's got a lot of other parts that will help middle-class American families afford prescription drugs and daycare and childcare that'll help them deal with the costs that impact their lives. But there's $555 billion of investments in combating climate that are essential parts of the Build Back Better legislation. I'm just going to talk for a moment about one piece that I've worked hard on and that I deeply value, the Civilian Climate Corps. When another Delawarean, Joe Biden, former senator, former vice president, began his run for the presidency, we talked about the importance of citizen service, of grassroots engagement all across our country to be a part of conservation, resiliency, and combating climate change. There's already well-established, effective and operating conservation corps in dozens of states and communities across our country. So the Civilian Climate Corps, a $30 billion component of the Build Back Better bill, will be building on that great, broad, and diverse and deep bedrock of experience all over our country, making a lasting difference. Senator Carper and I come from the lowest mean elevation state in America, and we are here in what is notionally called the Senate Swamp. Sadly, our home state, as the sea level is rising and as the ground that our state is on is subsiding, we are seeing the consequences, the impact of climate change. Just recently, a low-income community in a part of Wilmington was devastated by a flood in an area that hadn't flooded before. And we are seeing in states across our country, whether it's Florida or Louisiana, whether it's Delaware or it's California, the impact of climate, both in terms of wildfires and in sea level rise, in hurricanes and in tornadoes. As my friend Senator Sheldon Whitehouse likes to say, it's not just global warming, it's climate weirdness. It's the weather getting stranger and having a deeper and a broader and a more destructive impact. One of the ways we can invest proactively in resiliency is through standing up a strong civilian climate corps that's going to put young Americans to work, give them an opportunity to earn a college education, give them the experience of working as part of a corps, and put them at the front lines of combating climate change. Our work isn't done yet. I'm still optimistic we will add a polluter fee to the Build Back Better legislation here in the Senate, something that will both generate needed revenue and allow us to lock arms with our allies, close countries like the EU, the United Kingdom, and Canada in showing our climate ambition and in imposing greater costs on the imports from competitor countries that are still manufacturing things like iron and steel in a very carbon-intensive way. But whatever the final shape of the bill ends up being here in the Senate, the most important thing is that we take it up and we pass it. It'll be the single greatest investment in generations in combating climate change, in investing in new technologies, in deploying those technologies all over our country, and in showing the rest of the world that the United States is serious about leadership in bold climate action. So Tiernan, I'm excited to work with you, with Climate Action, with LCV in getting this job done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Coons. Thank you, Chair Carper, for your powerful words, for your incredible leadership. Delaware is lucky to be so well represented for climate champions in both the House and the Senate. Thank you to our other speakers who have been with us over the course of the last little while. So that, of course, includes Senator Michael Bennet, Senator Bob Casey, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, Senator Tim Kaine, Senator Debbie Stabenow, and Senator John Tester. Thank you to the House for already passing Build Back Better. Thank you to the Biden-Harris administration for all of their work. Thank you to the staff on the Hill and the administration and in the outside who are working tirelessly to get this done. And of course, thank you to the volunteers, the organizers, the advocates, the children. Thank you so much. Let's get it done for climate, jobs, and justice. Thanks, everybody.